Donald Trump did an interview with Lou Dobbs on Lindell TV, the My Pillow Guys network. Yikes. And it was a complete and total disaster. Donald Trump admitted something during this interview that is genuinely deranged and very indicative of Donald Trump's character. We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll also get to, after going over this interview, a wild video Trump posted of himself on Truth Social. So lots to go through. Stick around for all of it. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel and click the alert bell. Wonderful. Let's start with this clip just to sort of set the tone for the interview where Trump assesses the state of the country.
We're now in the 8th year of the political persecution of President Donald J. Trump. You are taking incoming every day from the legal system, the Marxist Dems. Give us a sense of how you feel right now and what your sense is of this country that will permit such an outrage.
So I don't think there's ever been a time like this. I think we're very close to being at the end of our country as we knew it, a great country. It's Marxist, it's fascist, it's communist. What they're doing is incredible. What they've done with weaponization of DOJ, FBI, and others, all sort of reporting up. If it's a local DA or a attorney general, a state attorney general. I think it's a very dangerous time. The hope is 2024, because if we win, we're going to get that straightened out so fast, because it's all people. It's the people from the top. It's a very dangerous time for our country. I really believe that.
I think Trump, no matter how much he tries to delude himself into believing otherwise, somewhere deep down, he knows that the justice system is not being weaponized against him. But his followers, unfortunately, really believe it. So while reality tells us the story of President Joe Biden coming into office during an unprecedented crisis and overseeing much of the stunning recovery, passing numerous historic pieces of legislation, and governing in what should be a pretty uncontroversial and stable manner, MAGA world believes he came into power and turned America into, as Trump puts it, communist, Marxist, fascist dystopia, which, by the way, every time those terms are thrown around by Trumpists, I'd love to know how they define them. Probably wouldn't be exactly accurate, but Trump and the right-wing media ecosystem have truly created an alternate universe for people to live in, which is really frightening. Now, here's a clip that I mentioned at the beginning. Trump hoping for an economic disaster, a crash under Joe Biden's watch.
We have an economy that's incredible. We have an economy that's so fragile. And the only reason it's running now is it's running off the fumes of what we did, what the Trump administration. It's just running off the fumes. And when there's a crash, I hope it's going to be during this next 12 months, because I don't want to be Herbert Hoover. The one president, I just don't want to be Herbert Hoover. But what they've done is incredible.
So, of course, Trump's argument would be, I'm assuming, that he isn't hoping for a crash, but he thinks one is inevitable for some reason. And so if one's gonna happen, he hopes it happens under Joe Biden. But let's just be honest with ourselves. He'd love to see an economic crash under Biden's watch. He hates the fact that the economy is so strong right now, and people are starting to realize that. He hates the fact that Biden was able to oversee a recovery like nobody could have predicted. Of course, you have the 14 million jobs created, but even after the pre-pandemic jobs were brought back, job growth was still stronger under Biden than Trump. And yes, I'm excluding Trump's COVID record for that analysis, even though Republicans would never do that for a Democratic president. And I have another clip to play for you from this interview, then again getting to that Trump Truth Social video rant that we're going to go over. But let's take a little bit more time on this so that I can properly debunk the idea that an economic crash is likely, because a lot of people, Trump, as you heard there, and within the right wing, are going off of that assumption in a lot of these conversations. A recession just around the corner. Is it going to happen right at the end of Biden's presidency, or if Trump won, would it happen at the beginning? That's just not backed up by the data. We went over this recently, but let's do it again. Here's visuals that depict the expectations for the economy according to a few entities for Q4 versus what actually happened. And as you can see next to me, GDP growth, job growth, unemployment, and stock market performance, all unbelievably better than expected. We're outperforming expectations. Then, not to mention zooming out, the fact that we've had a sub 4% unemployment for a longer period of time than we've seen in decades, inflation near zero the last 2 months and around 3% for the year. That should keep coming down. GDP growth really strong, and all these different good things. And of course, as I'll always say, it doesn't mean there aren't still massive problems. There are, but clearly the stewardship of the economy under Biden could only be contributing positively to these numbers. And then Trump saying that Biden's running on the fumes of the Trump administration's economic success just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, regardless of if you agree with my assessment of Trump's handling of COVID and the economy during that time. It's just a fact that Trump left office with a much worse economic situation than we currently have. Trump is one of only 2 presidents to have ever left office with fewer jobs than when he came into office. Again, a lot of that you could say was out of his hands, but excluding an analysis of his horrible governance, which we shouldn't do, but let's just do it during that time. Still, there's no way to say the horrible situation he handed Biden somehow turned into what it is now because of Trump. Ridiculous. With that being said, here is another moment from this interview.
We were going to pay down debt. We were going to reduce taxes further. We gave the largest tax cut in history, and we were going to pay down debt further. And we were doing a great job. And then we had a very unfortunate election. Now, I know who you're involved with, so I can say it here, but sometimes they say you'll cut it out. So, what's the purpose? But we had a rigged election.
We don't cut anything out.
No, you don't. That's what I'm saying. That's why I say it with you. We had a rigged election. It was rigged, 100% rigged. And the question I get most is, number one, how do you take it? And I take it, I guess, because genetically I take it. I think I also take it because we're doing so well. We're leading everybody by so much. So that helps. But the other question I get the most, probably number 2, maybe number 1 sometimes, is how do we stop them from cheating? People ask me, will they do it again, sir? Because, I'm in Florida now, and I drive to various locations and airports and places. Every house has a Trump sign on it. Trump 2024. We got all the votes we need. The risk is what's going to happen during election period. It used to be election day or election night. That's
Obviously, so dumb and dangerous. Just because there are a lot of Trump signs in that part of Florida that he drives through, it doesn't mean he's going to win the election. But he's once again instilling the idea into his followers' minds that the only way he could lose is if the election is rigged, if it's stolen. And that's how we get a really dangerous situation if he loses in 2024. I'll note as well that it probably is true that there are more Trump hats and signs and shirts than the same for Biden. And I'm actually happy to admit that. The reason is because most Biden voters are just voting for the better choice, the adult, the policies, and the president, not because they're obsessed with the person. Many Trump voters are obsessed with the person and have to show that in all of these different ways. Then moving on to Trump's late night video that he posted last night. We're going to watch this, then see how judges are responding to Trump's argument, sort of in real time as I'm recording this. This exact issue is currently being decided on by a 3-judge panel at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. So Trump is currently trying to have his federal election interference case just completely thrown out, just toss it, because he's asserting that he has complete presidential immunity. His argument being that everything he did while he was trying to block the peaceful transfer of power isn't prosecutable because he was president and it was within his official duties, which to me seems ridiculous. The judges seem unimpressed, at least so far. Again, this is all going on while I'm recording this. We'll get to that reporting in a moment, but here is some of Trump's video.
Because of Joe Biden, I spend a lot of time in courts, federal, state, city, and tomorrow I'll be attending another Biden-inspired federal appeals court argument on presidential immunity in Washington, D.C. Of course, I was entitled as President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief to immunity. I'm entitled to immunity. Every president has immunity, especially one that did the job I did. I did a great job. And I wasn't working for myself. I was working for the country. I wasn't campaigning. The election was long over. Wasn't campaigning. I was looking for voter fraud, something that I have to do under my mandate. I have to look for voter fraud. And I was finding it. Tremendous amounts of voter fraud in the 2020 election. We have volumes of information. It's all there. And I was doing my job, which I had to do. And it's my obligation to do. And otherwise, running our country and running it well. But just look around at the complete mess that crooked Joe Biden has caused. He's the worst president in the history of our country by far. He's also the most corrupt president. The least I'm entitled to is presidential immunity, just like any other president would get. I'd be the only one that they would even consider not giving me immunity, because for whatever reason, people are angry that I've done such a good job, and I've replaced people that were corrupt, that were supposed to be president.
Okay, all complete and total nonsense. And the judge is currently hearing this case. Seem to agree with me. Obviously, no official ruling yet, but here's the reporting I'm referring to. Donald Trump's arguments, The Guardian writes, that he can't be criminally prosecuted for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election results because it involved actions he took while still president, appeared unconvincing to a federal appeals court Tuesday, which repeatedly questioned such an expansive view of executive power. The 3-judge panel at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit expressed skepticism with the principal contention of Trump's lawyer that the former president enjoyed absolute immunity from prosecution and could only be charged if he had been convicted in an impeachment trial. Such an interpretation of executive power would mean, and listen to this, great point made by the judge, but ridiculous that you would make this argument in Trump's lawyer's position. Presidents could hypothetically self-pardon, sell military secrets, or order the U.S. Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate political rivals and escape accountability simply by claiming they were official acts, suggested Florence Pan, the circuit judge. Trump's lawyer initially sought to dodge whether presidents could be criminally prosecuted in such scenarios, but eventually offered a qualified yes, though only if Trump had been impeached and convicted in the Senate first. Karen Henderson, a George H.W. Bush circuit judge appointee, also seemed leery of Trump's position. Quote, I think it is paradoxical to say that his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed allows him to violate criminal law, she told Sauer during her questioning. So it looks like this won't go the way of Trump, as I think was expected, and Trump will indeed have to endure the criminal trial in regard to his attempt to disenfranchise millions of voters and block the peaceful transfer of power. Make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel.